Great. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining this Ask the Experts. This Ask the Experts is about saving money by securing access to all your apps with Azure Active Directory. Hopefully, you guys all were able to join the digital breakout session around this specific session. We've got a wonderful group of experts that will be able to answer some of your questions related to apps. But before we get into it, before I introduce our experts, some housekeeping items. So first, how to engage in the experts. So you are in a Teams live event. We encourage everyone to use the chat to ask questions. Questions will appear to all attendees once they are approved by the moderators. We have myself as a moderator, but also folks on the background. If you do find a question that's relevant for you, be sure to upvote those questions and we'll be sure to answer those. As a reminder, we have folks who will be answering questions verbally as well as over chat. And then at the end, we'll be sure to provide you guys with links and resources when the session concludes. Quick etiquette, this session may be recorded and it might be posted onto the Microsoft Ignite website. Please make sure you are respectful and welcoming of others. We do want to make sure everyone adheres to the Microsoft Code of Conduct. And here, as a reminder, for the entirety of the Microsoft Ignite event, be sure to adhere to the Code of Conduct. Welcome everyone, as well as be respectful to others. Now on to meeting the experts. We've got three great experts with us today. They all come from the Azure Active Directory engineering team. First is Alana Smith. She's a principal PM manager focusing on access management. Next, we have Sean Ivey, who is a principal program manager as well, focusing on our customer experience. And then we have Luis Leon, who is a program manager on the identity engineering team. You saw him deliver that great demo around ADFS migration, and so he's got also a tremendous knowledge around enterprise applications and managing them through Azure AD. Great, so let's get into some of the questions. Now, before we kind of jump into the questions, I did want to kind of throw a question out to you, Alana, as this came up towards the end in our chat. Is you mentioned that connecting your apps is free with Azure AD. Is this true for all applications?
Yes and no. So we recently made a change to our licensing requirements. Integrating all apps with Azure Active Directory is hugely important, and we wanted to reflect that in our licensing terms. So the recent change that we made, which we're super excited about, is that you can now integrate all cloud apps with Azure Active Directory, and that's free. So for those of you who aren't aware, we have a number of different editions of Azure Active Directory. We have one that's called free that also happens to be free, and that is the edition that you use usually if you're using Office 365 or Azure, and so that provides a bunch of base capabilities for identity and access management. Previously, we had a limit on how many applications you can use and what kinds of applications you could use with that edition of Azure Active Directory. We recently expanded that so that both apps that are in our gallery and custom integrations of SAML or OIDC apps could all be integrated with Azure Active Directory and used by users with no limit on the number. There are still a number of application capabilities that you'll need Premium 1 or Premium 2 for. So they include things like doing a group-based assignment, our application proxy functionality, things like that. But we believe that for most people, those cloud app integrations, they're going to address the core of your requirement for integrating SaaS apps with Azure Active Directory, and it's so cool that that's free, and that's no longer a limitation stopping people from protecting those apps with Azure AD.
Awesome. So this question may be for either Sean or Luis. How do you migrate internal-facing applications to Azure AD? So maybe some of those line of business applications. Any best practices around that?
Yeah, sure. So for those line of business apps, it depends on what the application supports, right? And what type of protocol it supports. If the applications is using modern protocols like OpenID Connect or SAML, they can be integrated as it is with Azure AD. They can use, if it's SAML, they can use the non-gallery approach that is well documented. on how you can integrate applications using SAML. If you use it, OpenID Connect, they can use the Microsoft Identity Platform. Is the on-prem app, it's a legacy app, but you wanted to modernize that app, you can use the Microsoft Identity Platform that has libraries like MSAL that will help you to implement OpenID Connect at the single sign-on protocol, so you can bring that application to Azure AD. If you cannot modernize those applications, or it's not on the plan to modernize those applications, and then the app is using legacy auth protocols, you can use App Proxy to protect that application also with Azure AD, right? Keep your application on-prem, but you can use App Proxy to protect that application with conditional access.
Yeah, and I just want to add one other thing there too, because we mentioned this in the session, but I want to make sure that it really resonates with everyone. When you're moving an application or reconfiguring an application, really, because that's what's happening, right? The app doesn't move itself. You're just reconfiguring the settings within that app to use a different identity provider. So using the case of like a SAML application, if you've got the app currently integrated with one of your on-premises identity providers already, whether it's ADFS or something else, you have to update that thing on a pretty regular basis anyway, especially if you're using, the default lifetime of the token signing cert. So a lot of the same things that you would do there, you're going to have to do to move the app over to Azure AD anyway, right? You got to update the certificate to make sure it's using the right one. We're getting the token signed by the cert that you're trusting in the app. And of course, then it's just a matter of making sure you're sending the right claims. So, the time that you would spend doing that, you can also use to integrate that app with Azure AD.
Great, wonderful. So we do have another question from Michael. It's kind of summarizing the session, and he's asking, is ADFS dead and is connecting all applications to Azure AD today's best practice? Alana, any thoughts there?
Sure. Certainly, as we think about where we're investing our time and attention for our team, the cloud is the future for us. Obviously, very few organizations are going to be all cloud anytime soon. And so we're going to continue to have those hybrid workplaces be a huge part of our customer base. But as we look at the future and where the real innovation we can drive is, then it's all the cloud. And so we're really excited by those places where we can use cloud intelligence to protect things on-prem, and we can use cloud intelligence to do things like make ADFS better. I mean, Sean in our session spoke specifically to how awesome is it that you can use App Proxy to put conditional access and MFA on an application you're running in your own organization. And so, ADFS is not going anywhere anytime soon, but all the innovations that you should be looking for are things that we're building in the cloud, and that's certainly our way forward.
Great. One question is around, what if I don't see applications that my company uses in the Azure AD App Gallery? How do I get that listed? Is there a process if I don't see an app that's pre-integrated? Sean, maybe you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can definitely integrate the applications with Azure AD, not an issue. If you have an app that's a application that others would use, right? It's not specific to your company, then you can request to have that application integrated with the Azure AD Gallery. There's a process for that, and we have a website that will explain, the different steps that you need to take to submit that request. And it really helps too if you know someone on the app development side that we can work with to help make that integration quicker. That's great for us. Definitely help get us in the gallery a lot quicker. The other thing though, if you have an application you're talking about, it's an application that it's something maybe you developed in-house or whatever, it's not something you would expect other companies to use, you can always integrate those applications using the custom application template. It's very similar to ADFS if you think about it, right? When you integrate an application with ADFS, you walk through a wizard that has different settings that you configure. The same thing is true for Azure AD. So in that case, you wouldn't pick a gallery application, you would pick an application, or you would pick the custom app template and then fill in the necessary information for whatever that custom application might be.
Perfect. So another question from Greg. He wants to know, maybe Luis, you can answer this. Will Azure AD App Proxy allow remote access to Windows Admin Center? Are there any limitations, for example, for remote desktop?
I will actually ask Sean if he knows that.
Yeah, so App Proxy can do a lot of things. One of the things that you can do is actually enable remote desktop with App Proxy. So if you've got Windows Admin Center installed on a server and you want to be able to access that, the easiest thing may be to just enable remote desktop to that server that's hosting the Windows Admin Center. The Admin Center, so App Proxy itself is typically hosting applications over HTTP. So always kind of think of that first. There are some exceptions, for example, remote desktop. But yeah, keep in mind that that's one of the things that we're doing there. There's also integration though with our other partners that do header-based authentication that may be able to help with applications outside of just the HTTP stack. So there's some other things that you can look at there. But yeah, I think accessing Windows Admin Center specifically, the easiest thing may be to set up App Proxy to work with remote desktop.
Can I add something there as well?
Sure.
Yeah, so you know, the wheelhouse for App Proxy at present is web applications, but and from Joy's keynote this morning, you would have seen we're making some advances around things like header-based auth and things like that. And certainly as we look to the future and we understand how organizations want to bring themselves forward and into the cloud, other types of applications are definitely things we're interested in natively supporting in the App Proxy. But again, as Sean said, we also have those secure hybrid access partnerships with companies like Zscaler and F5, and they're also an option if those are products you currently have inside your organization.
Great. So one question around the app registration experience. Are there plans to unify the app registration and enterprise apps experience?
That's probably me again too.
Yeah, go ahead, Alana.
Yeah, so we had this vision when we were developing the user experience that we had certain tasks that were done by developers and certain tasks that were done by IT admins, and I'm going to be very growth mindset and say we have learned since we had that perspective. We understand there are big challenges, particularly when some functionality is available in app registration that isn't available in enterprise apps and vice versa. And so it's a huge priority for us because we know that causes problems. It causes support calls that we're getting and it causes frustration. So that's a big priority for us moving forward, to reconcile those experiences, to make sure we're better serving both developers who really are wanting to get permissions in Azure AD for their applications and move forward, as well as admins who are trying to roll out applications to their entire workforce. And so, you know, that's something we're prioritizing highly. We want to reconcile. We want to work on and significantly improve. And so, at present, no, they're still two separate experiences. But in the future, we want to try and reconcile that. And actually, Luiska is one of the key people leading that. So did you want to speak to any of that, Luis?
Yeah, so as Ilana, you mentioned, we're definitely adapting and we did more research on how do we gonna consolidate these two portals, right? Like to meet the needs of these different personas with different needs. It's definitely not super simple, right? But it's great. It's a great challenge that we're taking right now, and we are going to take an like step-by-step approach. So like we're thinking to start with how do we bring functionalities to the existing portals so that admins and developers doesn't have to bounce between the different portals, and we can mitigate some of that pain. That will lead us eventually to have a consolidated app platform.
Awesome. So Luis, this might be a question for you. So you kind of demoed how you could find apps that are integrated with ADFS. You also mentioned there's other discovery functionality. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and kind of walk us through the ways that people can find kind of apps that may be integrated with ADFS to migrate?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the things that I demo was the ADFS activity report that uses Connect Health data to kind of like discover apps and get insights. This is a great tool that we develop as a start point, right? We want to evolve that feature to the point where it can do what the script that I demoed did, right? Like it reads the configurations and it will just like give you a detailed description of, hey, this is what, like we're going to create an Azure AD, and then you can just click buttons and create that app. So that's the tool that we're investing right now as a hub for your migrations. If for some reasons you cannot install AD Connect Health or you want to use other type of discovery tool, we do have a script that you can run on your ADFS farms that will output an Excel spreadsheet with all this data too, so you can also review there. That won't give you the user counts or won't give you the these insights about signing. That it's very, very helpful to prioritize your application, but it does give you a perspective on your configuration and what can and cannot. Something that I want to emphasize is that not because an app, it says that it's not fully migrated to Azure AD, it means that you're blocked from upgrading your authentication from ADFS to Azure AD. It just means that you may need to rethink the way you configure that app on ADFS, right? Like, because there are things that apply when you have your app on ADFS, but we do it differently on Azure AD, right? So again, because you see a warning that says, hey, this configuration may not be fully compatible, it just means that there is a different way that you can do it on Azure AD. Yeah, Ilana, you want to say something?
Oh, I just wanted to pile on about our Cloud App Discovery. I didn't know if you were going to hit it.
Yeah. I was going to mention that for ADFS, those are the tools that we're using it right now. For apps that are not on ADFS, and actually there are like shadow IT apps that you may not know about it. Microsoft Cloud App Security has this app discovery feature that it can tell you what apps your users are using that are not under, IT surveillance. So you can discover those apps and bring them to Azure AD to secure that single sign-on. Secure those apps using single sign-on. So that's another great way for you to discover those apps.
Yeah, I'll just add too there that that discovery functionality that our friends in Cloud App Security build is actually included in the Premium 1 edition of Azure Active Directory. So that's something that you can use as part of that investment. It's got some very cool functionality. It's really easy to set that up because it leverages the Defender client that is hopefully on all of your endpoints in your organization to gather those usage logs. So it's super straightforward just to turn that on and start learning what people are using, whether it's connected, whether it's Shadow IT, as Luisca said, or if it's connected to another IDP. It helps you reconcile and prioritize, which I think is actually one of the key things that Luis hit during his demo is what's the most important thing to move? What can you decommission? It's not just what is everything and how do I move it? It's let me understand what is the right order to do this.
Yeah, and just to close up on the comment, upgrading your authentication, it's a great moment for you to rethink how to do things or have you done it in the past and think how you can simplify your current configuration and in Azure AD. So it's a great opportunity for, clean up all these messy and hard to maintain configurations that you have. And as I said, the ADFS activity report, it's where we want to invest a lot of work to make it easier for you to upgrade the authentication to Azure AD. So please help us with feedback and features that you want to see there so we can make it very, very easy for you to upgrade your auth.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Luis, Lana. So one question, this might be good for you, Sean. So we have a question about how a customer wants to move away from the local Active Directory infrastructure, so the on-prem infrastructure, but they still have legacy apps. Does App Proxy provide a solution for this if they want to consolidate the local Active Directory?
Yeah, that's a great question. So think of App Proxy as more of a bridge between Azure Active Directory and your on-premises Active Directory. It's a way to make the two coexist while still getting all the benefits that you would expect from Azure Active Directory, things like conditional access and single sign-on and all the security features and things like that for your on-premises applications that are still integrated with Active Directory. At some point, you know, we want to look at how we can get these applications to natively be in Azure Active Directory as opposed to still relying on your on-premises Active Directory. But right now, think of App Proxy more as a connector between those two environments so that it's seamless for your end users. It's easier to manage and maintain for your administrators. But at the same time, it's still hosted and using your on-premises Active Directory.
Awesome. One question about labeling of categories of applications. Are there any plans for providing labels and categories for applications? Maybe Alana or Luis.
You know what? I think that one's for Luiska.
Yes, this is something that we are currently working on, and like it's in the roadmap, but we are like actually doing work with that.
Is that what coding looks like, Luis?
Yeah, actually, we're going to have an identity advisor session on that, and then if people it's interested to, you know, learn more about that, maybe just give a like to the question, and you know, I can see for a private preview or something that is coming. Eventually, essentially, what we're looking for is to have a private preview for enable you to add attributes, custom attributes to applications and other resources, not only applications, but other resources like users, where you can kind of like apply those custom attributes and being able to search or group for them. So to improve manageability.
Awesome. So it's kind of transitioning a little bit to maybe some of the end user type of experiences around applications. What are some of the features that a customer could go and leverage that make it easy for teams to find the apps that they need? Alana, any thoughts there?
Yeah, absolutely. Probably the biggest advance that we've made recently is the introduction of collections into our end user experience. So we have an end user experience we call My App. So I think it's myapplications.microsoft.com. And that is where organizations can surface the apps that they're making available to their user. Our newest innovation is around collections, where you can collect up a set of functionality around a certain theme and push that out to users. We also have, in our entitlement lifecycle management functionality, we also have some really interesting innovations around what we call access packages. And so just say, for example, you're working on a project and that project has a team, a SharePoint site, maybe you're using Salesforce, and maybe you've got a task tracking tool of some kind. You know, as people are coming in either from your organization and for other organizations, and you want to make that set of functionality, that set of resources available to them, we have entitlement lifecycle management that can make it really easy for them to go and request access to that package of resources, and to have that the approval of that access be done by someone close to that project who understands who should have access and who shouldn't have. So it's a really great way to delegate out access decisions out to people who are closest to the coalface and understand who should have access. But it's also a really great way that we can package up a set of resources and hand those around more easily. And of course, as that project ends or people move away from that project, it's super easy for us to remove that access as part of that lifecycle management. That's really essential, I think, for keeping an identity and access system well guarded.
Awesome. So maybe a question for you, Sean, around automated provisioning. Could you maybe talk through a little bit how, like, what is automated provisioning, user provisioning for SaaS apps, and how customers can kind of take advantage of it and the benefits of provisioning apps?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. So we all have applications, a lot of us do, that require the user account to actually be within the application. And today, there doesn't seem to be a lot of consolidated effort around figuring out a seamless and coherent way to make that happen. So now, of course, we have some industry standards and SCIM and things like that to help with provisioning. And this is something that Azure Active Directory supports natively, right? So trying to do this from Active Directory on premises, there's a whole bunch of things that you may have to do and set up to get it working. But with an Azure Active Directory, it's pretty straightforward to publish an application, set it up for SSO. You don't necessarily have to, right? One is not dependent on the other, but usually it makes sense. You set it up for provisioning so that now when you assign access to a user to one of those applications, the user account and all the properties that are necessary for that user to be lit up within the application that you're setting up can be sent from Azure AD over to the application pretty seamlessly. So you get all the setup and everything done there, and then not only are you now provisioning your users over to that application so that they can get access to it when they need it, you're also deprovisioning the user, right? So you delete or disable that user account. The user account's gone from the application, so we can ensure that they're no longer able to access that application. And I think this is really important moving forward, right? SSO has been the focus for so long now. I think we're getting to the point where that's really mature and across all sorts of different technologies. But we still have a long way to go from a provisioning perspective. And I think Azure Active Directory helps us get a lot of the way there. And you know, when you start adopting this for your applications, I think you'll see the benefits and start looking for that same feature and functionality for as many of the applications as you can get to support it.
Yeah,
Great.
I would also add too that you know, in the identity team, we believe really strongly in industry standards and making sure these things are open and consistent. And from a provisioning standpoint, SCIM is a hugely important standard, and we're involved in revitalizing that. And we think it's the way forward is to allow identity systems, applications to really make those connections well. And so if anyone's developing apps, support SCIM.
Yes, we love open standards.
Yeah.
One question about application usage reports. Maybe Luis, you have some insights here. Are there reports about the application usage available? Any specific reports that you would call out?
Yeah, we do have on enterprise apps, there's a section called Insights and Reports. Users, yeah, Insights and Reports, I think. And then there you can see the ADFS activity report, right? And then there's another report on activity for applications in Azure AD where you can see the percentage of success sign-in, failed sign-ins, and you can, yeah, basically just like review, you know, like any like applications that's been having like many failures, and then you can actually investigate there, look at what kind of failures that app has been doing. So that's one report. Another report that we've been working on, it's in private preview. It's about certificate expirations, but for applications in the gallery, right? Like for signing certs that Azure AD uses to sign the SAML response, because there is a certificate that the clients use to authenticate with Azure AD. That's not what this report is about. This report is about expiration certificates for signing certificates for the SAML response. So that's another report. We have many ideas about what other reports we can enable, but I know we recently launched these sign-ins capabilities where you can go and play with all these sign-in events and audit logs and create your own reports. So like you can customize them to meet the needs of your organization. I think it was mentioned at Joey's keynote too, these capabilities.
Great. So actually, speaking of Joey's keynote, one of the questions we have is around app consent flow. And so one question is around, is there going to be the capability to allow consent for my tenants apps as opposed to just verified publishers? So either first party or third party apps. Alana, thoughts there?
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly there's a bunch more we want to do with the consent workflow and with being able to be policy driven about what is allowed and what not. The feedback about my tenants apps are special. We definitely want to, that's something we've heard and something we want to be able to support. We want to make sure we're setting the trust there correctly. you know, we can all be socially engineered. We could all be socially engineered into registering an application in our tenant. So we want to make sure that we're not blanket approving things just because they're registered in our tenant. So we want to make sure we're doing the right things there. But that's certainly some feedback that we're hearing and things we're looking at for the future.
Awesome, thanks. So it looks like we're at the end of the session. But again, thank you so much for everybody for attending, asking questions. We will have another Ask the Expert sessions later today, later this evening, I should say, Pacific time, for you guys to continue asking questions, as well as we'll have another replay of the digital breakout session. We've got a ton of resources for you guys to go learn more about Azure Active Directory and how to kind of save money by securing apps. Be sure to visit the Tech Community Video Hub, Virtual Hub. We have short links here to kind of help you go through the steps on how to integrate all your apps. So it's a short link, aka.ms, 5-step app integration. We encourage you guys to go check it out. And then if you really want to understand the economic benefits and value that you can gain by using Azure AD for all your apps, be sure to kind of review the Forrester TEI study that we did with them. Thank you again, and thank you again to all our speakers for experts, I should say, for answering these great questions.
And thanks for being kind to us, Jimmy.